body? Anyways, the rest of the body of Theo is hollow, the dense wrinkles shaped by the silent shuddering of an eternal burden now smooth across his color-drained face. His soul remains still for the moment, defenseless, its energy expended in defeat. It lies sprawled across his body like a death shroud.
That's the servant down and the mistress still to go. A good start, worthy of being built upon.
I mean, you could call it a mincemeat body. That is very true.
After journeying for lifetimes, I can't imagine his failure, knowing it was all for nothing.
In his own way, Theos must have truly believed he was caring for the people of Aora, protecting them from themselves. A shame his soul won't have a chance to reflect on his errors before it enters the wheel.
Some point, you have to look at the things your god is telling you to do, and ask yourself if it's worth it. He spent his lives, more than any of us will ever know. For what? Binding the world to a lie. Could a man like that ever be redeemed?
Well, time to find out. Explore Theos' soul. All right, here we go. With a deep breath, you plunge into Theos' soul, and where in Brackenbury it had been a maze of narrow corridors and dead ends. Now it is expansive and borderless, its walls crumbling into heaps like the ruins of Engwith. As you pass through them, you travel for what seems like ages, rushing to a known destination, a memory you glimpsed once before. At least you see it, no more than a pinprick of light at the end of a long tunnel, expanding slowly at first, then quickly as you near. You come out in the room you are standing in now, but it is new and pristine and filled with people, thousands of them, all turned towards the great Audra pillar and the machine that encases it. Theos stands at the machine, and you are one with him now. You look out at the crowd, at faces of shriveled old men and cherub-cheeked little girls, at mothers bouncing infants to quiet them, and fathers clasping their children's restless hands and watching you with somber acceptance. A woman with tears in her eyes gives you a small nod. You turn back toward the machine, your breasts constricted beneath the weight of unwanted knowledge, preparing yourself to set out alone on a journey without end. You close your eyes and open them again to find the machine still in front of you, beckoning. You take your place in front of it and place your hands upon a large mechanical disc at the base of the great crystal column and speak a single word. Giant rings creak to life, building speed, setting arrays of carved draconic mouths aglow and sending tremors through the platform beneath you. The entire room shakes now with the force of the accelerating machine, all sound drowned out by its deep, deafening thrum. Brilliant tendrils of light arc outward from the pillar in all directions, and you look over your shoulder to see them engulfing the crowd, burning them brightly like hot iron. One by one, the tendrils disappear, leaving ashen effigies where people once stood, many of them disintegrating into gray heaps under the stress of the tremors. You look about the Audra pillar, and a glowing spherical mass has begun to coalesce atop the column where the arcs converge. It grows in pulses, translucent and bulbs like some immense chrysalis, suspended in slow rotation as though it were being spun from the arcs of light. When the last arc disappears, the spectral mass hangs a moment, no longer rotating, so bright you must shield your eyes with an outstretched hand, and it seems to you as though it is looking at you. You bow your head in acknowledgement, and look back to see it melt in the pillar like warm candle wax. The pillar flares with a flash of light, bring as the sun itself, then fades to darkness. The machine slows down to an abrupt halt, and when the last echo of its grinding cogs has passed, the chamber is still, and you are alone. From all sides, reality begins to bleed in through the memory, and you find yourself in your own skin once more, looking down on Theos' lifeless body. You sense a listlessness to Theos' soul, an overwhelming fatigue that hinders its immediate escape and makes it vulnerable to manipulate. You feel as though your victory has given you some kind of hold over it, and you are able to do with it as you please. Hmm. I did say that I would try and turn his soul to a better path. I'm gonna return to the cycle. Or wait, hold on. The decision to return the souls isn't based on this choice, is it? Or is it something else? Before I make my choice. Is it right after this? Is this just his soul? Not this choice? Okay, return of the cycle. Boom.
To apply the teachings of Durance would more immediately satisfy the cravings in my bones. But this is the stronger lesson, for his soul is already marked by his own hand.
Some acts cannot be forgiven, it seems.
I suppose we'll see if he can rise above that.
You can feel the pull of the intricate capillaries that rise up from the depths below the chamber. Many are bound up with the great pillar and would pass to Wodica, but some are filled with the souls of the dead, bound for somewhere else entirely, and you know these are paths of rebirth. And then, stretching your presence as far as your spirit will allow, you make contact with one such path. And between it and yourself, you open up what feels like a long tunnel, sheer and undulating like the gullet of some enormous beast. You shift your focus to Theos' soul, clinging weakly into its vanquished shell, and with all your concentration, you wrench it free and send it hurtling through the channel until it passes into the Andra vein and can be felt no more. In the stillness that follows, a single word echoes through your mind, a word you spoke when you were one with Theos in an ancient memory. You realize it's the word that activates the machine. No, Eder. No, Eder. No. Stay back. Eder still goes forward. As you approach the machine, the path underfoot suddenly changes to a cobbled road. If you hadn't experienced visions like this already in Tir Evron, you'd be tempted to believe that the machine had sucked you into it and deposited you in the middle of nowhere. The sun blazes overhead, and the rolling meadows and thick forests on either side of the road could be anywhere in the Deerwood. A shrill cackle turns your head. Standing next to you is a malnourished man clad in a threadbare loincloth and manacles. His entire body is stripped with lash marks, and there are scarred pits where his nose and ears should be. He stinks of stale sweat and unwashed filth. You notice someone wandering down the road, but the figure's back is to you. The scarred slave has your attention for now.
You know something of quiet servitude, Watcher. Groveling and simpering before the gods whose aid you need, so that when they finally raise you to a place of power, you can seize what you desire.
No, Chen Wen, I will not be taking a week vacation. Oh, you.
You have labored at the pleasure of others. That shriveled hag in Hadrit House, those preening soldiers with more taste for silk than steel, the wretched tribesmen playing out their fantasies of grandeur. And then you cowered and knelt before the gods themselves, begging one paltry favor and receiving riddles and visions in response. And now the gods give you orders and commands, even while you set out to fix what they cannot. Yet what have they offered you?
They'd offered us the means to stop Wodika and the Theos. That's enough for me. I get the feeling that this is his way of giving you new orders on behalf of his own master. Be careful. Given the breadth of the Iron Manacle, it's amazing that he can raise his bone-thin arm, but he does, and he points to the person walking the other way along the road.
The exiled queen is not an ungrateful patron.
You get a better look at the long figure and realize that she's wearing robes, tattered and singed but fine nonetheless. On her head is the silhouette of a broken crown. She continues walking, her pace slow but determined. Is this Wodika?
Finish the work Theos began. Strengthen Wodika with these souls and allow her to become the most powerful of all the gods, with you as her favored.
I've been working against Wodika this whole time. Why would she thank me now after I've defeated her most loyal servant? Loyal and weak. Theos proved his inadequacy. Well, weak, definitely, yeah, sure. His inadequacy when he failed to anticipate you. A plan exposed is worse than none at all. But you have proven resourceful, equal to the schemes of gods. Wodika has a long memory, Watcher, for both friends and foes, and she keeps her oaths. And what do you mean by her favored? The recipient of Wodika's blessings, she has always had a place for mortals of particular merit. If you help her now, she will become the most powerful of all the gods, and you will be the one who made her so. Think of the lifetimes of reward you would reap. The only reward I wish is the joy of pulling bloody shards from her broken crown from my staff when I have finished with her trial. Scan turns his flinty eyes in Durance. So says your companion, who's been abandoned by his own god. Do you really trust him to make alliances for you? Helping Wodika would mean that the secrets of the gods stay hidden. He rubs his hands together, his black eyes gleaming. Safely hidden, yes, from the violent overlords who would cease to fear punishment in the next life. From the very heavy-handed masters who would answer to no one. The world needs some schemes, or are the souls of Kiss so pure that you would snap the tenuous threads that bind society? And Theos makes a better overlord? This one is the god of slaves. What would he have left if the world were unchained from his mistress's lies? Skane takes a bundle of his feet and hefts the burden into his back. I've explained the narrative, Watcher. Continue as a pawn of the gods or a partner of one. At the other end of the road, the figure stops. She turns her head just enough to look over her shoulder. Her face is mostly hidden, but one merciless eye peers at you from a cheek of rippled, scorched flesh. I won't help you.
You say that now, but when you're standing in front of the machine, considering the lifetimes and the powers that await you, we'll see what you do.
All these evils were even seen, going all the way back to the Saints' War. That was all Wodika. Imagine if she was stronger on top of it all. Yeah, not happening. Oh god, gotta talk to everybody. Final
Hey.
Final talks.
Theos, he had hold of your soul from a long time back, seems like. You get what you needed from him?
I got an answer to an old question.
Well, those can be hard to come by. But maybe
Did I
that's
mention
best.
that I don't like Skane?
Forces you to find your
you
own
may
footing.
have, and I may have forgotten.
You'll be feeling better soon then. Good. That's real good. You got it figured out what you're going to do about all that?
Yes.
Got a lot of people out there thinking they've been abandoned by their gods. There's not much that'll put the fear in you more than that. You can take my word for it.
Eddar's the best bro, though? Yes. Eddar's best bro.
If it was in my power, and I know it's not, but if it was, I'd find a way to give them the courage to face it. Not because they think there's some god looking out for them, but because they've just got it in them. After what you've been through, though, I'm sure you got your own ideas. Better make it good.
I'm ready. So much for Theos, then. Now you have a chance to set things right, back to the proper order of things. It will take the Deerwood generations to recover, but at least these souls will find their way back to the wheel, as it should be.
Eddar's MVP, even with custom parties, he's traveling with me. There you go. Oh, that was all her stuff?
Ah, the end of the road greets us at last. You fared well, Watcher. Better than any Watcher has right to. Seems you were a field in need of a flame's cleansing. Would that my own trial had produced such an outcome. I had figured myself for the field all this time. But you were the field, and I the darkness. A lesson neither of Durance nor of Margarin. But with that trial's end, a new one begins. A god's trial. And I will stand in judgment without mercy.
Astounding. I always knew the Leaden Key stood for something big, but I didn't quite realize what I'd gotten myself into. And now, you're in the middle of something even bigger. With a decision that will affect millions. But even if you send the souls somewhere specific now, who knows what the next turn of the wheel will make of them? We can't really control what happens to them. Nor should we try. I had to see the monster Theos had become to realize that.
Maybe so.
It's your decision, of course. And whatever you decide, I'm glad our paths crossed in Gilded Vale.
Ready, Watcher.
Oh, Sagani.
Never thought I'd see something like this in my travels. Lends a little perspective, doesn't it? To think, the decisions the Angwithans made thousands of years ago still shape our lives today. It would be a shame to deny these souls the chance to find their own way and their own purpose.
Thank you for traveling with me.
I'd probably still be twiddling my thumbs by the side of the road if you hadn't come along. Thanks for bringing us this far.
Right.
Here we go. This is it, guys. With your companions bearing witness, you step up to the place where Theos once stood before his people long ago. The great machine lies in front of you, idle, ready. You have seen this machine and others like it in operation. You understand how it works. It is a device for directing souls. As a watcher, it would be a simple matter to influence that direction. Though as big as the machine is, it may be the last thing you ever do. Speak the command word and command to activate the machine. Now there's a shriek of stone grinding against stone as old cogs loosen and begin to turn. You have only moments before the souls will be sent into the Adra vein. This will be your only chance at redirecting them. 2 is the one I want, correct? 2 is Hylia's choice, right? Yes? Okay. Return the souls to the bodies they were intended for. You close your eyes and expand your perception outward, taking the immense totality of the tens of thousands of souls orbiting the chamber. You grasp on the souls your grasp your grasp on the souls is tenuous. You find yourself fighting to keep them all within your influence. You can feel them slipping away from you as the machine gains speed. A brief moment comes when it feels as though you hold all of them at once, and their force is so great, it feels as though they will tear you apart. In that moment, you dedicate your entire being to bending their orbit, channeling their flow in a new direction.
At your command, the ancient device became your instrument, spinning to life with deafening resonance and gathering up the swirling essence like thread on a great spindle. There, in the pale pulsing glow of the machine that set you on this path long ago, you summoned all your strength, focusing on your objective and blocking out all else. With a single concussive blast that rocked the chamber and sent you tumbling to the ground, you freed the souls from their stasis. Exhausted, your consciousness slipping away, your last sight was of the machine, dark and dormant. Then your eyes closed, and sleep welcomed you at long last. After coming to and searching for some time, you discovered the route Theos used to enter Sun and Shadow, and embarked on a long and arduous ascent back to the surface. You emerged in Ter Evron after days of tunneling through the rubble Theos had left behind, and when you stepped into the daylight, you were faced with a different Deerwood than the one you had left. At your direction, the souls diverted by Theos were guided back to the vessels originally meant for them. For the first time, parents of hollow-born children woke to the cries of their infants and looked into their eyes to see them staring back. People fell to their knees where they stood, thanking Helia or Mogren, or even Aethys for their forgiveness of whatever guilt they felt they bore. But for all the relief that had come to some parents, others only found new grief. For many thousands of Hollowborn had died during Wideone's legacy, many by their parents' own hands. For those children, there would be no homecoming. Yet the last Hollow birth was in the past now, and those parents willing to risk trying for a new child were frequently rewarded, often with twins. Many felt they saw Helia's hand in it, and the year would be remembered as the year of Helia's splendor. Lord Radric's zeal had brought him back to life once, but it would not do so again. Radric's destruction at your hands spelled the end of his suffocating rule over Gilded Vale and the surrounding area. In his absence, the village prospered, becoming a popular destination for new settlers anxious to leave Defiance Bay after the riots. Without a nearby ruler, it also grew more wild, with many settlers moving on as soon as they'd arrived, turned off by lawlessness that was excessive even by Deerwooden standards. Nevertheless, despite the challenges of living there, Gilded Vale had survived, and would continue to survive for the foreseeable future. Following the assassinations of Duke Avar Wolfgren and Lady Webb, Defiance Bay was thrown into political upheaval. In the ensuing weeks, the streets had become the domain of looters and blackguards. Few dared to step outside their own doors alone or unarmed. But order was soon re-established by the Knights of the Crucible, who, despite their depleted numbers, had gained favor in the public eye for their role in the unraveling of the conspiracy surrounding Wideone's legacy, and were quickly reinforced by returning forces from Fleetbreaker Castle. For the Knights, their resurgence marked a return to the tradition as well. Having seen firsthand the dangers presented by dabblers in animancy, the Order quickly abolished the practice internally, preferring the familiarity of their hammers and forges to the uncertainties of Essence and Adra. Their identity rediscovered,
the knights suppressed their political aspirations and began once again to train their recruits in the art of blacksmithing, recapturing the post-revolutionary ideals of Deerwood and regaining the respect of its citizens as a result. Though the machine atop Ter Noaneth had been disabled, it had not seen its last use. Heritage Hill was rebuilt, and no sooner had the first families moved in to resettle the district than members of the Leaden Key, acting under standing orders from their Grand Master, climbed the tower and reactivated the machine. The initiates slew a handful of the new settlers under cover of night and watched as history repeated itself, the victims reanimating and devouring the survivors. After this second incident, the district would remain abandoned. The Duke's assassination at the apparent hands of an animancer had caused catastrophic rioting in the streets of Defiance Bay. But those who had escaped
should have blown it up.
the palace hearings remembered the testimonies of the strange guest who had shown up that day and absolved animancy, implicating the Leaden Key instead. The rumor spread quickly, and soon the popular belief was that the assassin had been a Leaden Key spy. When the legacy had lifted, people came to see it not as a sign that the riots had been according to the god's wishes, as Theos had hoped, but as a confirmation that animancy had never been the source of the problem in the first place. Deerwoodans instead convinced themselves that the riots had somehow purged Defiance Bay of Leaden Key spies, and that the end of Whitewind's legacy was their well-deserved reward. The rage against animancers was quickly forgotten, and those who had survived were permitted to return to Brackenbury Sanitarium and rebuild it so they might resume their studies. The town of Deerford had seen the last of the cult of Scan. Dark rumors about the town's many curses quickly faded, and travelers soon returned. Abidon's renewal brought new vigor and purpose to a god long known for quiet, steady labor. Handicraft saw a revival in the Deerwood, and no smith wanted for an apprentice. Additionally, Abidon's restored interest in preservation led to redoubled efforts to survey Engwithan ruins. Animancers and craftsmen alike found much to study, but tensions with Air Glanfath rose. As for Stalwart, the Battle of Caron's Scar only strengthened their resolve to unlock the mysteries of Durgan steel and build new marvels with the White Forge. However, Stalwart's ambitions brought them into further conflict with the Raid Serans, as more and more impoverished communities gathered at the border and vowed to finish the work of the Iron Flail. It would be many generations before the region saw peace. The Flames That Whisper clan found a cautious peace with Stalwart, particularly once the villagers heard of the aid the ogres had offered against the Eyeless. The clan moved back into the Russet Wood, and as Stalwart grew in prestige, the villagers formed a tighter alliance with their ogre neighbors. Within a generation, ogre traders visited Stalwart, and village hunters were welcome in the Russet Wood. Harmka's death had brought the Devil of Carrick little satisfaction. In time, her taste for vengeance soured. What replaced it was a hunger to feel something, anything, new. Summer had thinned the snowpack twice over when she felt the joint at her elbow first begin to stiffen. She turned her back on the hopes of animancy and civilization and walked east. She pushed through the mountains, past Raid Ceres, and into the broad plains of Ishamiddle. She had forgotten what it was like to simply journey, no goal or destination in mind. Though she felt nothing more than the steady thump of her feet on the road, the endless horizons and grassy meadows were new to her. She measured her time in the gradual rusting of her body and was satisfied. Her movements slowed, but so did the world around her. Waist-high grasses undulated intact in the wind, as gradual as the tides. Sparrows and blackjays made steady pilgrimages across the sky, each flap of their wings a solemn salute. She could hardly move when she found something she had never seen before, the ocean. With the last of her strength, she pulled herself beneath the water, content at last to feel the movement of currents and the constant caress of the waves. Free from the burden of her memory, Maneha soon left the gift-bearers and resumed adventuring. Now that she had a taste for the world, she wanted to experience it anew. Maneha rediscovered her zest for battle, extravagance, and romance. She kept her gaze on the horizon, looking from one journey to another more distant, from the lover in her arms to another more fervent. Hers was a life of excitement, violence, and passion. She moved too quickly for regret to catch up with her, and she hoped only that she might outpace it in the next life as well. The fortress of Cadnua emerged as a bastion of security in the midst of an untamed land, becoming the envy of every thane and earl in Deerwood. Legend grew over time of its impregnability, and stories of formidable invaders easily scattered by the keep's defenses became popular around the hearths of Deerwoodinians. Likewise, it also became a beacon to travelers, merchants, and visiting dignitaries alike. Reputed as the finest fortress in all Deerwood, people would journey from near and distant lands alike to experience its fabled hospitality and grandeur. After the death of the Master below, a strange quiet fell over the endless paths of Odd-Nua. The attacks on the fortress above ceased, Odd-Nua's silent titan the closest remaining thing to a master in its musty, forgotten passages. Palagina had gone against the Duke Spell's orders by inventing a new trade arrangement with the Anamenfath to accommodate the recovering Deerwooden market. With the Deerwood's people still weakened by Widewind's legacy, the Valian Republics easily pushed their would-be competitors out of the market. For her outrageous insubordination and audacity, Palagina was banished from the Republics. She traveled north in the Eastern Reach, avoiding Valian ports and entering the ranks of the kind wayfarers. Despite her bravery and dedication to those in her care, her strange appearance made her feel like an outsider wherever she went. Adair chose not to return home to Gilded Vale. Still most comfortable far from cities, he settled in Deerford, which, like many towns in the Deerwood, was beginning the slow process of rebuilding. Believing now that it was the obligation of Kith to be the leaders their gods had not, Adair was soon named mayor of the town, and under his guidance, Deerford soon began to prosper. He expelled the last of the Scanites from the area and drew new settlers with the offer of land, a trick he had learned from someone he otherwise preferred to forget. With each passing day, Deerford would come to more closely resemble the Gilded Vale of Adair's childhood, the one worthy of its name. When the dust settled in sun and shadow, Aloth looked upon the remains of Theos Ixarchanon, his former master. He saw where the Grand Master had gone wrong, and what would be required to undo the harm Theos had wrought. With a flick of his wrist, he burned Theos's robe, headdress, and every other symbol of the man's power. Never again, he vowed, should Kith live in fear and blind obedience to an authority they did not understand. Armed with the knowledge and courage he had gained on his journeys with the Watcher, he set out on the long and lonely task of dismantling the Leaden Key. With both their aims fulfilled, Kanarua bid the Watcher farewell and sailed back to his beloved Rawatai. There, he reported on his findings to the Lore College. Kana spoke of the Engwithan people, describing both their vile experiments and their inspiring accomplishments. He too spoke of the destruction of the
Definitely
tablet
a
by
lot
the
of-
Leaden Key,
a lot
and the
of
group's efforts to
end
erase
dialogue.
the Engwithan legacy from the world. Both inspiration and cautionary tales, he said, could be found in the world beyond Rawatai's borders. Kana urged his people to continue to pursue knowledge abroad so that the lessons found there might benefit Tekoa. Kana's inability to prove his theory of Engwithan influence diminished his academic standing, but his passion drew much interest from those less concerned with degrees. Kana swiftly became an influential figure in the move toward a more collaborative approach to expansion on the northern continent. In his personal life, he came to enjoy the reputation of an affable eccentric, willing to share grand and impossible secrets, along with a drink and a song. With Theos defeated and the souls released from sun and shadow, healthy children were born once again in the Deerwood. The grieving mother sought a place where she might do penance for the birthing bell. She returned to Deerford, where, to the astonishment of the villagers, she delivered the first healthy child in over a decade. She remained there, and with each new birth, she saw a measure of hope restored to the Deerwood, and a measure of grace for her own troubled past. Durrance used Mogren's strength only until Theos had been cast from the world, and then swore off her influence entirely. Regret came to weigh heavily on his mind, and a man who had never previously lacked for words or opinions came to embrace silence and contemplation. He continued to wander, penniless and destitute, searching now not for the reason for his goddess's silence, but for a mechanism for revenge. The charred robes he continued to wear as a reminder that he had been burned by his goddess, and not just by the flames of the Godhammer. Sagani experienced the 4 months of her journey back to Masuk in vivid colors. She strove to memorize every moment of her final trip through the Deerwood, Erglonfoth, the Valian Republics, and beyond, preparing to tell her village of what she had seen on her long journey. All of Masuk shared in her triumph, and she felt her pride and elation magnified by the joy of her village. Never again did she doubt the value of her sacrifices. After decades as a long hunter, Sagani finally became one of Masuk's most respected elders. She guided her community with wise counsel, and a generation after she finally passed, another huntress journeyed into the world to find her soul. For you, the death of Theos brought an end to your waking visions, and a silence to the whispers of the past.
Interesting.
In their absence, you were able to sleep. The questions of a distant lifetime ceased to trouble your soul. All that remained was what to make of the answer. But at the moment, there was little to be done, and the matter would have to wait. A long journey loomed ahead, made no easier by your decision to bring an infant to Sun and Shadow.
Guys, that was awesome. This is such a good